Delaware is the sixth least populated state in the entire country, yet it sits right in the middle of one of the most crowded regions in America. That doesn't seem to make sense, does it? To the north, you've got Pennsylvania, home to over 13 million people. To the west and south is Maryland, with more than 6 million residents. And just across the river, New Jersey packs nearly 10 million into a state smaller than Mississippi. But Delaware? Just about 1 million people live here. And yet, it's not far from big cities. It's within reach of Philadelphia, Baltimore, even New York City. It's part of the busy Northeast Corridor, a place with over 50 million people. Delaware has good roads, good beaches, and no sales tax. It's even got a rich history, the first state to join the Union. So why do so few people live here, especially compared to the states right next door? In this video, we'll explore why Delaware never became as big or as crowded as its neighbors, and why that might not be a bad thing. Early history. Delaware's story starts long before the United States ever existed. Native American tribes like the Lenape and Nanticoke lived here for thousands of years, using the land's rivers, forests, and coastlines to fish, farm, and trade. The first European contact came in 1608 when English explorer John Smith sailed through, but he didn't stay. In 1631, the Dutch tried to settle the area with a small post near today's Lewis, but it didn't last long due to conflict with local tribes. A few years later, in 1638, the Swedes arrived and built Fort Christina, what we now call Wilmington. But even that didn't last. The Dutch came back in 1655 and took control again, only to lose it all to the English less than a decade later. By 1682, Delaware was given to William Penn and became part of Pennsylvania, which meant it grew in the shadow of Philadelphia. It had its own local government by 1704 and proudly supported American independence, with Caesar Rodney's Midnight Ride helping to secure its vote for the Declaration. And in 1787, Delaware became the very first state to join the new nation, earning the nickname the First State. But much of its development stayed tied to larger cities nearby, especially with Philadelphia growing faster and becoming a major hub. Wilmington had promise, even being closer to the ocean, but history favored its bigger neighbor, upriver. So, from the very beginning, Delaware developed more like an add-on than a centerpiece, and that early path still shapes its size and influence today. Delaware is small. One of the most straightforward reasons why so few people live in Delaware is simply this: it's small. Delaware covers about 1,148 square miles of land, making it the second smallest state in the entire country. To put that in perspective, Pennsylvania is about 23 times larger, Maryland is 5 times larger, and even New Jersey, which feels small, still has nearly 4 times more land than Delaware. So even if Delaware had the same population density as New Jersey, it still wouldn't reach anywhere near the same number of people. There just isn't enough space. Delaware actually is more densely populated than Pennsylvania. It just gets overlooked because it's smaller overall. It's a bit like comparing a neighborhood to a whole city. This size difference places a natural limit on how many people can live here, no matter how desirable the location is. So before we even look at history, economy, or anything else, Delaware's small size alone helps explain why its population is so much lower than its neighbors. Economic landscape and employment opportunities. One of the biggest reasons Delaware has fewer people than its neighbors is the size and strength of its economy. Delaware has important industries like finance, healthcare, manufacturing, and technology. In fact, healthcare is the largest by number of workers, and it's expected to keep growing. But even with that, Delaware's total economic output is still much smaller than nearby states. In 2024, Pennsylvania had a gross state product of about $804 billion. That's the total value of everything it produced in a year. Maryland produced $435 billion, and New Jersey reached over $691 billion in 2025. These larger states also have big industries like real estate, higher education, IT, and even air travel. And they don't just have more money flowing, they also have many more jobs. Delaware's labor force in mid-2024 was about 505,000 people, with around 485,000 employed. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania employed over 7 million people, Maryland over 3 million, and New Jersey over 5 million. So, even though Delaware has a healthy job market and low unemployment, it simply doesn't have enough jobs to attract and hold a large population. This difference in size means that people who grow up or study in Delaware, and especially college grads and skilled workers, often look to nearby states for more job options. Those larger states offer more industries and more chances to move up in a career. Delaware's economy works well for its size, but it doesn't create the same pull for new residents. And that's one big reason why its population remains small. Housing and cost of living. At first glance, Delaware might seem like a good deal. As of early 2025, the median home price here is about $343,400. That's lower than the national average. But prices are rising fast, nearly 8.5% a year, and there are fewer homes available, which makes the market more competitive and more expensive for buyers. In places like Sussex County, near the coast, the cost of living is already 2% above the national average. To live comfortably in Delaware, a person would need to make around $8,647 a year. That's more than in Pennsylvania, where the suggested annual income is about $84,390. Now let's look at affordability. Pennsylvania's average home price is lower, at around $271,000, and it ranks as one of the most affordable states for homebuyers. More importantly, Pennsylvania has a much better home price-to-income ratio, just 3.99. Meaning more people there can afford to own a home without stretching their finances too thin. Delaware's ratio is 20.09%, which suggests that many families may have a harder time buying here, even though homes aren't the most expensive overall. So while Delaware may seem more affordable than high-cost states like New Jersey or parts of Maryland, it's not necessarily easier to live in. And that may be another reason why its population isn't growing as fast as its neighbors. Delaware's unique tax system. Delaware is well known for having no sales tax at all, which makes it very attractive for shoppers and homeowners. It also has some of the lowest property taxes in the country, and ranks number 1 for unemployment insurance tax fairness. In fact, Delaware consistently ranks among the top 10 states with the lowest overall personal tax burden. But the picture is more complicated when it comes to business. Even though many people call Delaware business-friendly, it actually ranks last in the nation for corporate tax competitiveness. That's because while it's easy for a company to incorporate in Delaware, meaning to register their legal structure, they don't have to operate or hire people there. That's why 68% of Fortune 500 companies are incorporated in Delaware, but most of them don't have offices, factories, or workers here. This means Delaware's tax system brings in corporate filings, not large numbers of residents or jobs. Compare that to Pennsylvania, where a flat income tax and a gradually lowering corporate tax rate help support a more balanced and stable economy for everyday people. New Jersey, on the other hand, ranks almost at the bottom in many tax categories, with one of the highest corporate tax rates in the country, and poor marks for affordability. So even though Delaware wins on paper in some areas, the way its tax system works hasn't translated into population growth. This unusual setup helps explain why Delaware looks attractive to businesses, but still has far fewer people living there than its neighbors. Small land, big limits. Delaware has rules in place to make sure development happens in an organized way. If someone wants to build new homes or businesses, they have to follow zoning laws and get approval to make sure it fits the state's long-term plan. That's smart planning, but it also slows things down. In bigger states like Pennsylvania or Maryland, there's more room to spread out, so a few zoning limits don't matter as much. Delaware is also home to a lot of protected lands like Cape Henlopen State Park and Gordon's Pond. These are beautiful places, and they help preserve the environment, but they're also off limits for new housing or big developments. If you block off 10% of the land in a huge state like Pennsylvania, it's not a big deal. But in Delaware, that same 10% takes away around 200 square miles, a much bigger slice of what's available. And that means there's simply less space left for new neighborhoods, schools, and businesses, and less room for more people to move in. Strict zoning, strong environmental protections, and limited land all combine to quietly hold the population down. Education. Delaware is a peaceful place to live. It has good schools, safe neighborhoods, and a slower pace of life. Many people love it for exactly that reason. But when you compare it with Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New Jersey, you begin to see why fewer people choose to live here. About 91% of Delaware adults have finished high school, and over a third have college degrees. That's solid. The state also has good schools like the University of Delaware and Delaware State. But Pennsylvania, for example, has over 150 colleges and universities, including Ivy League and world-famous schools. Maryland is even ranked as one of the most educated states in the country. New Jersey has Princeton. These schools draw in young talent from all over the world, and many of those students stay after graduation. The history of the Dakotas is a fascinating example of how the growth of population, divergent traits, and political disputes can shape the destiny of an entire region. What started as a single, expansive territory in the 19th century usually split into two communities with economic ties and political ambitions. The decision to divide Dakota Territory was not made overnight. It was the result of years of demographic imbalance, conflicts over governance, and a desire for more equitable representation. Yet, despite their differences, both North Dakota and South Dakota chose to retain the Dakota, preserving a shared identity that spoke to their common heritage. Today, the two states coexist as neighbors with distinct characters.